Hi Tubies, here's your Alexandra, and welcome to my video about how to play Lord of the Rings. So, first of all, we get to get something clear here. It's what game are we actually looking at? Because there are actually two games from Games Workshop that are called Lord of the Rings, the tabletop strategy game. This is the first one here. The starter rulebook from the Mines of Moria. This is here the Lord of the Rings skirmish game. And then we have Lord of the Rings, the War of the Ring. So this here is more like an big battle tabletop game. Something similar to Warhammer Fantasy. Well, this book is really nice. I got a review about this book some time ago, but actually the army lists in this book are not really balanced, and that way this game was an epic fail. So this time we are taking a look at the Lord of the Rings, the skirmish based tabletop strategy game. So this here, my tubies, is an example of a Lord of the Rings army. This is just a tiny little collection of some Urukai and some heroes and a troll. So this here is a well, completely playable army, and the good thing about Lord of the Rings is there is no such thing as a real army list or a plan on how you have to build your army. Basically that means you can pick whatever you want into your army, because that's quite simple. So let's have a look into the book itself. At the back here we have the army lists, and this is simply divided in the forces of evil and the forces of light. And you can pick whatever models you want. You can make an entire army only consisting out of character models like Gandalf, Aragorn, Gimli, Boromir, Legolas. Basically you can take the Fellowship of the Ring and fight against your opponent, and that's totally fine. Or you could make a evil army, build it out of Sauron, then the Mouth of Sauron, then you take Gothmog and maybe a Balrog, and then let's say 20 captains of Eastlings. If you want to, it's quite expensive, but you can do this. Well, there are some limitations where obviously named characters like Aragorn or Sauron or whatever, those named characters you can only pick once, because they are technically only one time there. But other than that, you're totally free to build whatever you want. For example, here we have my Urukai led by Saruman. Then we have Lords. Then we have a captain of the Urukai. And we have a ring race. Wait a second. Ring race? What have a ring race to do in a Urukai army? Well, if you want, you can place him in there. That's not a problem. Basically, he's an evil guy. You can put him in. So, let's go to the rules now. Unlike in other tabletop games, where you have a whole player turn with movement and shooting and also ever, and then you go over to the next player, in Lord of the Rings it is something different. You roll for initiative, and then you have one whole turn, and then it is one player moves with the initiative, then the other player moves, then shooting. The player who is with the initiative shoots first, then the other player shoots, and then close combat is determined by the one with the initiative. So, to determine the initiative, you have to divide your forces at first hand in the good side and the bad side. If both players have good or evil forces and are fighting against each other, well, you have to determine which one is better or badder, and so you determine that by a simple roll of a d6. The one who has a higher d6 determines if both players are good or evil, who is counted in this game as good or evil. So, in the first turn, the good player has always the initiative. In later turns, it is determined by a roll of d6. So, for example, the side of the Rohirrim here rolls in the second turn 5, and the Uruk-hai rolls a 4. So, in the second turn, also the good ones have the initiative. So, let's go to the next phase, the movement. The movement in this game is also a little bit different than in other games. For example, you have not any kind of units that are bound together. Each one of your models is a free player. So, in order to move, you look up the movement chart you have in your book. There you see humans have 6 inches or 14 centimeters. Then, for example, you look at an Uruk-hai. Here he moves also 6 inches or 14 centimeters. In this game, you have to say to your opponent in what measurement you are measuring all the distances, in inches or in centimeters. You have to determine that before the game. You can't switch in and off, because you can see here, here's 14 centimeters and here's 6 inches. There's a difference, but if you determine before the game which method you use, that doesn't change anything at all. So, in order to move, you simply measure from the front corner to the front corner. For example, here, when I move him like that, so that the front corner is no more than 6 inches away from the starting point. Wrong would be you start here and measure and place him like that, so that the back corner is at 6 inches. That's wrong. That would be too much. That is good. So, then you have also terrain, like that here. If you move through difficult terrain, like for example here through these ruins, if you determine this is difficult terrain, then all your movement is halved. So for example, you start here at the start of the thing, and then your warrior can move up to 3 inches, because it is halved, like that. If he is outside, so then you measure, okay, to the difficult terrain, it is 2 inches from his 6-inch movement. So he has 4 inches of his movement left, and they are halved. So he will move up to 2 inches inside the terrain, because it is halved inside. Another form of movement penalties you have for barriers. If barriers like that here are up to half of the height of the model. So, for example, for this Rohirrim, it would be, well, a ½ inch. See? And, for example, this layer here would be not so difficult terrain, because you can simply pass it over. But if, for example, the barrier is higher than himself, or more than half of him, it is counted as a barrier. So in order to cross a barrier, you have to roll a d6. So you move your miniature with all your movement to the barrier, and you can pass the barrier if the model has still movement that would bring him on the other side. So for example, if he starts his movement in this area here, he could possibly get over this. So you move him then to the barrier, and then you roll a d6. On a 1, the barrier cannot be passed and the model cannot move anymore this turn. If he rolls a 2 until a 5, the barrier is passed, but the model is in base contact with the barrier and cannot move further. And if you roll a 6, then the the model gets over the barrier and can go on with the rest of its movement. The same appears also if you want to jump over a cliff that is not more than twice his size. So a model can jump like that, size of a cliff. And well, you roll also with a d6 for that. Same results like jumping over a barrier. But if you roll a 1, the model stumbles and falls down the cliff and gets falling damage. I won't go over the falling damage, it's a chart, and you can look that up in the rulebook. In order to attack a miniature, you simply move him in base contact. For example, we have here the Urukai and here the Rohirrim. The Urukai moves into base contact with his opponent and stops right there. Even if he has a 6-inch movement, he stops when he touches the enemy. But there is a little difficulty if you have more than one enemy. Let's say the Rohirrim wanted to attack Saruman behind his Urukai. So, can the warrior run past them to Saruman? No, he can't, because these two guys are in the way. Each model has a 1-inch control zone bubble around him, and that means he would intercept enemy models that would pass this control zone. So for example, if the warrior here from Rohan wanted to pass through, he would intercept him and start fighting with him. The only way he could pass there is the following scenario. So we have here 3 good models, and the first one starts moving into him in close combat. Oops. Then the second one here moves to him. And now these models are occupied in close combat and they don't have a control zone anymore. And now Haldir can pass through here to Saruman and engage him in close combat. Here we have now a multiple model close combat scenario. You can see here these 2 fighters of the good forces are fighting here 3 Urukai, and here Haldir fights alone 3 Urukai. So in order to fight this close combat, you have to divide the combats into smaller proportions, because you can't fight in Lord of the Rings with 3 models against 2 models. It's always 1 model against the smallest amount of models. So the player whose initiative is can determine which model will fight against each other. So which one? So for example, he determines this Urukai fights this Rohirrim, then this standard bearer fights this 2 Urukai, and still here cannot be determined anything because Haldir is fighting those 3 alone. So for example, if you bunch them all together like that, for example, then the good player would determine, okay, let's see, those 2 are fighting the standard bearer, then he is fighting alone, and those 3 are fighting against Haldir. You always determine that like that. To fight a close combat, it's quite easy. Each model rolls a number of d6 that is determined by the attack count. So for these 2 models, they have also both each 1 attack. You roll 1d6 for them, and then the winner is determined with the highest d6. If they are equal, then the winner is the one with the highest close combat value. So, for example, the warrior of Rohan has a close combat volume of 3. The 4+ behind this is his ballistic skill. So, the warrior has a close combat of 3, and let's see, the Urukai of the White Hand has a close combat statistic of 4. So, the Urukai is a better fighter than the warrior of Rohan. Now let's see who will win this fight. The warrior of Rohan has a 4 and the Urukai has a 6, so he wins. After a close combat is won, the losing model is pushed back 1 inch, and after that the Urukai can try to strike at the warrior and can kill him if he able to roll the good enough roll. So to determine that, you have here your damage chart. Here it's almost like in Warhammer. You have your strength volume, and then you have the defense of the opponent. So let's have a look. The Urukai has a strength of 4, and the Rohan warrior has also a toughness of 4 or defense of 4. That means you need a 4+ to wound him. There you can see. So you roll then a number of d6 that is also determined by the attack number. So the Urukai has 1 attack and he has 1 chance to kill this Rohan warrior. He rolls and he fails. So this combat is over and you go over to the next combat. The next combat was fought between the warrior of Minas Tirith against 2 Urukai. In this case, the Urukai will roll each 1d6 for all their attacks. So, and the Rohan warrior will also get 1d6 for his attack. So, the Urukai will roll a 3 and a 2, and the warrior of Minas Tirith rolls, and he rolls a 1. So, he also loses the combat. But, in this case, the Urukai have now 2 attacks against him, because each Urukai has 1 attack in the profile. So, and they try to wound him, but he has a higher defense because he is wearing a heavy armor. So they need 5s to wound him. And they roll and they both miss. And so this close combat is also done. In this case, we have Haldir, the elven hero, is fighting against 4 Urukai. 3 in direct base contact, and 1 is wearing a pike / a spear. And with that weapon, he can support his brethren through base contact in his second row. And now we see how many attacks Haldir has, because he is actually a hero, and he might have some more. Here we have him, Haldir, and he has a combat volume of 6, and he has 2 attacks. So, he gets to roll 2d6, and the Urukai now gets 4d6, because 4 Urukai are actually fighting. So, you roll the 4 Urukai, and they manage to get 2 6s. So, and now Haldir is rolling. Oops, sorry. So, Haldir manages to get a 4. So, the Urukai now have won the combat. Haldir is also moved back 1 inch, and now the Urukai have 4 possibilities to kill him. They have a strength of 4, and he has a toughness of 4, so also 4+. And they roll, and Haldir takes a wound. So, in this game there is no armor save. The armor is already counted into the defense volume, so he loses 1 of his life points. But good for him, he has 2 of them. But there he has also this strange things here. Heroism, willpower, and then fate. To that we come in a different video. I hope you liked this video about the basic combat in Lord of the Rings. Next time we go over shooting, magic, and all the willpower stuff and some other stuff. Until the next video, you're Alexandra.